I was born in Chicago, south side of Chicago, and pretty much grew up there my whole life. We lived with my grandparents. My dad took off before I was 1 year old, so I was pretty close to my mom. Growing up, I got involved in the music industry. I had taken classical piano when I was a little kid. Went ahead and studied that, and then when I got into high school, went ahead and joined a band. Got a little farther apart from my family. We hit the road a lot. I hit the road when I was turned 18 with a southern rock band. Never played southern rock, but it was popular at the time. Started partying a lot, having a good time, being away from home. You know, what we thought was a good time. We would just a lot of times just pretty much party our brains out the whole time. Was mixed up with a few different bands, and then by the time I got to be in my 30s, we ended up, I did some recording with some pretty good bands that had record contracts and things like that. And one of the bands that we had recorded a few albums was a little band called Iron Maiden. We were playing all over Europe and the UK, so we thought we were doing pretty good. There was really no connection with God whatsoever. The whole time I was growing up, I really never opened a Bible, never really went to church. One girl talked me into going to church one time, and I said, well, I'm not going to go there because I can't drink. So she let me go in there, and I had a 12-pack of beer and sat in the back pew. And that was pretty much my connection with any religion at that point. My life got to the point eventually where I would wake up in the morning and do cocaine just to get out of bed in the morning, and then drink throughout the day, do whatever I did, and then do heroin at night just to mellow back out. So I ended up doing that for quite a few months, probably close to a year, with that being my lifestyle daily, and then ended up going on the road with my band. Got off the road, and I was feeling really bad. Got back home and ended up, couldn't remember my name, didn't know really what was happening to me. What happened was I went out for a walk trying to get some fresh air, and I couldn't even remember how to get home. So it ended up, got stopped by the police, and they don't like you walking down the street when you don't know where you live and what your name is or anything. So they brought me to a hospital, and they put me in a psych ward there. So my uncle ended up finding me. He knew I was supposed to be back in town from the band, and he found me in there as a John Doe. So it ended up, he had me transported to a hospital that was kind of familiar with me more, and so I was taken there, and they found out that my liver wasn't functioning, and that's why I couldn't remember my name. Didn't really know what year it was or anything like that. Pretty messed up. They ended up finding a collapsed lung, a few other, my heart wasn't working properly, kidneys weren't functioning, so I went on kidney dialysis, and I was in the hospital a total of 3 months. And during that time, they told me that I probably wouldn't live any more than 6 months. I was in a coma for almost 30 days. And some of I thought they were dreams or whatever they were. It was kind of an equivalent to actually being in hell. And I couldn't wake up out of this dream or whatever it was. So it went on for almost a month. So it was enough to pretty much open my eyes. So at that point, I felt like my life had hit a brick wall, with me driving. So I just, I knew I had to make some changes at that point. So that's the first time I ever really prayed to God. he did hear my prayer, because the next thing you know, doctors are coming in saying, yeah, your kidneys are doing better, your liver is starting its functions again, and there was no medical reason for that happening. So that was the point when I knew that God had heard my prayer, that I just wanted to change my life, or for him to let me die, because I was done, pretty much done with it all. And so from the point of being admitted to that hospital to the point of getting out was 3 months, and I walked out of that hospital and decided to change my path. I was still working on walking, because I was pretty weak, so I ended up going out to the mailbox. That was my therapy each morning. I went out there. The second day I was home, there was a magazine to write to pen pals. So I said, well, God, I was asking you for what should I do next? And this may be what you have in mind for me. I ended up writing to one person in that magazine, and that ended up being Celestine. She was stuck in a little village in the Philippines, and she liked to find out about different cultures, different places, and the best way to do that was to write letters. After, I believe it was about 1.5 years of writing her and talking on the phone a little bit, but mostly to her dad invited me out to the Philippines for a vacation, to meet the family, to come to their church. When I first got to the Philippines, she saw me, and I still had earrings and chains and necklaces, and walk out there. My hair was really long at the time, and I get off the plane, and she actually ran. So some people called me, and I said, oh, where's Celestine? And he said, oh, she ran that way. So we ended up, I finally met up with her when we had to take a ride back to town, and got to talk to her, though she was a little freaked out to see me. And that's the first time I met Celestine and her family, and really heard about Jesus from a different perspective. I flew back to the States, and we continued to write and talk on the phone more and more. And we eventually decided that I would bring her to the United States on a fiancé visa, and that we would get married if she saw the way that I lived. She wanted to see how I lived and what I was doing, because she didn't know anything about the U.S. So she came over here, and all I did at that time, it was the middle of summer. I was working a lot. So she went ahead and said, okay, let's get married. I said, great. She was unlike anybody that I had ever met. We were living in Chicago. With the economy the way it was, ended up being no work, nothing going on. Couldn't make the house payments. My house payments were over $2,000 a month. What we decided to do was focus more on doing something in the ministry and doing God's work. Celestine had tried to talk me into it for a few years, doing that, and I was working and making a decent income up there. So I said, how are we going to afford these house payments and things? I prayed to God about that, that whatever his plan was, that we would follow it. I didn't care what happened, because I was under so much stress at that time. And we did end up losing our house, losing this and that. Everything kind of fell apart. And I said, Lord, why is this happening? But all the places that we looked at in about a 5-state radius around, everything fell through. And then we were asked to come down here to Thompsonville and do a special music at this church. So it was a long trip, about 6 hours from Chicago. But we decided to do it, go out kind of on faith and come down here and just we really didn't turn anything down if we thought that God was leading. So we went to a lot of different churches during that time, and had talked to our good friends, Gary and Rosemary Marlowe, and they suggested that we had looked around here, said the housing is a lot less expensive than Chicago. So we looked here and ultimately found a place that was right next to the church, and we could easily get back and forth, and not too far from an expressway if we're doing gigs and things. So we ended up moved down here and decided to start up the band. We put an ad in the local paper, and next thing I know, I was getting a lot of calls for Christian musicians looking to put a band together. I'm very happy that God let me get back into the whole swing of life, and it was just I had counted myself pretty much out of the running at one point, and now He's given me a second chance. So I figure these are days. Every day is granted by the Lord at this point, and nothing I have done has contributed to that. So I will praise Him through the song every day that I'm here from now on. No matter where you are in your life, there's problems, there's things that are messed up. What I did was I just took it to the Lord in prayer. I had never prayed before in my life, and I did that, and He turned my whole life around. I asked Him to do it. I had to give it all up. I couldn't really hold on to anything that I was part of my other life. I just gave it all up, and He led me in a great way. And I would say that wherever you are in your life, your walk along this path, you can give it up to God and just ask Him to lead the way, and He won't do you wrong.